Master the book of Genesis in 10 minutes. Welcome to Mustard Seeds. The book of Genesis is not just the first book of the Bible, it's the foundation for understanding who God is, who we are, and the grand story of redemption. But let's be honest, it can be intimidating. That's why I'm here to help you grasp its key stories, themes, and lessons in just several minutes. Stick with me to the end because the final takeaway might completely change how you view this incredible book. Let's dive in. Genesis begins with a declaration that sets the tone for the entire Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. This is not just an introduction, it's a profound truth. It tells us that the universe didn't come into existence by chance. Instead, it was purposefully designed by a creator. The 6 days of creation unfold with a rhythm and pattern that reveal God's power and intentionality. 1. Day 1, light and darkness. God speaks light into existence, separating it from darkness. Light symbolizes order, clarity, and life itself. Imagine the vast emptiness suddenly illuminated by divine command. This is the beginning of time as we know it. 2. Day 2, sky and waters. God separates the waters, forming the sky. This isn't just about creating weather systems, it shows how God brings structure and boundaries to chaos. 3. Day 3, land, seas, and vegetation. Dry land emerges and God fills it with plants, trees, and all kinds of vegetation. Every seed contains the potential for growth and renewal, demonstrating God's foresight and creativity. 4. Day 4, sun, moon, and stars. These celestial bodies are more than light sources, they mark time, seasons, and cycles. This reveals God as the architect of both space and time. 5. Day 5, birds and sea creatures. The skies and oceans come alive with vibrant, diverse creatures. From the majestic eagle to the smallest fish, each reflects God's imaginative design. 6. Day 6, land animals and humanity. God creates animals to roam the earth, but the climax of creation is humanity, made in God's image. This phrase is packed with meaning. Humans are designed to reflect God's character, creativity, morality, and capacity for relationships. After completing creation, God rests on the seventh day, blessing it and setting it apart as holy. This teaches us the importance of rest, reflection, and worship. In chapter 2, the focus shifts to humanity. God forms Adam from the dust and breathes life into him, highlighting the intimate connection between God and humans. He places Adam in the Garden of Eden, a paradise filled with beauty and abundance, and gives him a purpose to care for and steward creation. But God notices something is missing. Adam is alone. So he creates Eve from Adam's rib, establishing the first human relationship. Together, Adam and Eve represent the ideal partnership, designed to complement each other and thrive in unity. The creation story is foundational because it answers life's biggest questions. Where did we come from? Why are we here? The answer is clear. We are here by God's design, made in His image, to live in relationship with Him and care for His creation. Genesis 3 marks a dramatic shift. The harmony of creation is shattered by a single act of disobedience. Adam and Eve are placed in the Garden of Eden with one clear command. You are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat from it you will certainly die. But then the serpent appears, a cunning and crafty creature. It plants a seed of doubt in Eve's mind by twisting God's words. Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? The serpent's tactic is to make God's command seem restrictive rather than protective. Eve, drawn by the fruit's appearance and the promise of wisdom, eats it. She shares it with Adam, and immediately their innocence is lost. They realize they are naked and cover themselves with fig leaves, a symbol of their newfound shame. When God confronts them, Adam blames Eve, and Eve blames the serpent. This blame game reflects how sin distorts relationships, causing division and fear. God pronounces judgment. The serpent is cursed to crawl on its belly. Eve will experience pain in childbirth and tension in her relationship with Adam. Adam will toil to produce food from the ground, and death will become humanity's destiny. But even in judgment, God's mercy shines. In Genesis 3:15, He makes a promise. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel. This is the first prophecy of a Savior who will ultimately defeat sin and Satan, Jesus Christ. God also provides clothing for Adam and Eve, covering their shame with animal skins. This act foreshadows the sacrificial system and the ultimate sacrifice of Jesus, who would cover humanity's sin. The story of the fall is tragic, but it's also a reminder of God's unrelenting grace. Even when we fail, he pursues us, offering hope and redemption. Part 3. The First Family and the Spread of Sin, Genesis chapter 4 to 11. The consequences of Adam and Eve's sin ripple through their descendants, starting with their own children. In Genesis chapter 4, we meet Cain and Abel. Both brothers bring offerings to God. Abel offers the best portions from his flock, while Cain offers some of his crops. God accepts Abel's offering but rejects Cain's, not because of the offering itself but because of Cain's heart. Jealousy consumes Cain, and he lures Abel into a field and murders him. When God confronts Cain, he asks, "Where is your brother Abel?" Cain's chilling response, "Am I my brother's keeper?" shows the deepening impact of sin. Despite his crime, God protects Cain, marking him to prevent others from taking vengeance. This shows God's mercy, even in judgment. By Genesis chapter 6, humanity's wickedness has grown so great that God decides to cleanse the earth with a flood. But Noah, a man of faith, finds favor with God. He is instructed to build an ark and gather his family and pairs of animals. For 40 days and nights the earth is covered in water, but God remembers Noah. After the flood subsides, Noah offers a sacrifice, and God establishes a covenant, promising never to flood the earth again. The rainbow becomes a symbol of this promise, a reminder of God's faithfulness. But humanity's pride resurfaces in Genesis chapter 11 with the Tower of Babel. People, unified by one language, decide to build a tower reaching the heavens to make a name for themselves. Their goal? To elevate themselves rather than glorify God. In response, God confuses their language, scattering them across the earth. This event explains the origin of different languages and nations, but it also shows that human pride cannot thwart God's plans. The lesson from these chapters is sobering. Sin spreads quickly, affecting individuals, families, and societies. Yet, God remains sovereign, continually offering mercy and preserving his plan for redemption. Part 4. The Call of Abraham, Genesis 12 to 25. With the introduction of Abraham in Genesis 12, the story of the Bible takes a significant turn. God's plan to redeem humanity narrows to a specific family line, beginning with Abraham, the father of faith. God calls Abraham, then known as Abram, to leave his homeland of Ur and go to a place that God will show him. This call comes with an extraordinary promise. Abraham will become the father of a great nation, his descendants will inherit the land of Canaan, and through him, all peoples on earth will be blessed. This promise, known as the Abrahamic covenant, lays the foundation for the entire Bible. It's through Abraham's lineage that Jesus, the ultimate blessing for the world, will come. Despite God's promises, Abraham faces challenges. For years, he and Sarah remain childless. At one point, they take matters into their own hands and Abraham fathers a son, Ishmael, with Sarah's servant, Hagar. While God blesses Ishmael, he reaffirms that the covenant will be fulfilled through a son born to Sarah. When Sarah is 90 years old and Abraham 100, Isaac is born, a miraculous fulfillment of God's promise. The name Isaac means laughter, reflecting Sarah's initial disbelief and the overwhelming joy of his birth. But Abraham's faith is tested in one of the most dramatic stories in Genesis. In chapter 22, God asks Abraham to sacrifice Isaac, the very son through whom the promise is to be fulfilled. Abraham obeys without hesitation, trusting that God will provide. At the last moment, God intervenes, providing a ram as a substitute. This story points directly to Jesus Christ, the ultimate Lamb of God, sacrificed for the sins of the world. Abraham's willingness to obey, even in the face of losing everything, makes him a model of faith for generations to come. The takeaway from Abraham's story: God's promises never fail, even when they seem impossible. Faith is about trusting God's timing and his ability to do what he has promised. Part 5. Isaac, Jacob, and the Birth of a Nation, Genesis 26 to 36. The story continues with Isaac, Abraham's son, and then Jacob, who becomes a central figure in the narrative. Isaac's role is less dramatic than his father's, but he serves as a bridge in the covenantal promise. He fathers twin sons, Esau and Jacob, and here's where the drama unfolds. Jacob, though the younger twin, is destined to carry on God's promise. However, he doesn't secure the birthright and blessing through faith. He uses deception. With his mother Rebekah's help, Jacob tricks Isaac into blessing him instead of Esau. This act of deceit causes a rift, and Jacob flees to avoid Esau's wrath. While on the run, Jacob has a life-changing encounter with God. In a dream, he sees a ladder reaching from earth to heaven, with angels ascending and descending. God speaks to him, reaffirming the covenant he made with Abraham. Jacob's descendants will inherit the land and become a blessing to all nations. Jacob's journey is marked by struggle, both with others and with God. This is most evident in Genesis 32, where Jacob wrestles with an angel throughout the night. Refusing to let go, Jacob demands a blessing. He emerges from the encounter with a limp but also with a new name, Israel, meaning one who struggles with God. Jacob fathers 12 sons through his 2 wives, Rachel and Leah, and their servants. These sons become the patriarchs of the 12 tribes of Israel. However, Jacob's family life is far from harmonious. His favoritism toward Joseph causes jealousy among the brothers, setting the stage for the next major section of Genesis. The lesson here? God's plan unfolds even through flawed individuals. Jacob's life reminds us that while we may wrestle with God and face consequences for our actions, His grace is sufficient to accomplish His purposes. Part 6. Joseph's Story and God's Providence, Genesis 37-50. The final chapters of Genesis focus on Joseph, one of Jacob's sons, and his remarkable journey from betrayal to triumph. Joseph's story is a vivid illustration of God's providence, the idea that God is always at work, even in the darkest circumstances. Joseph is Jacob's favorite son, and his father's favoritism is symbolized by the famous multicolored coat. This, combined with Joseph's dreams that suggest he will one day rule over his brothers, fuels their jealousy. They conspire against him, throwing him into a pit and eventually selling him into slavery in Egypt. In Egypt, Joseph's life takes a series of dramatic turns. He rises to prominence in Potiphar's house, only to be falsely accused by Potiphar's wife and thrown into prison. In prison, he interprets the dreams of 2 fellow prisoners, a gift that eventually brings him to Pharaoh's attention. Joseph interprets Pharaoh's troubling dreams, predicting 7 years of abundance followed by 7 years of famine. Impressed, Pharaoh appoints Joseph as second in command over Egypt. During the famine, Joseph's brothers travel to Egypt seeking food. They don't recognize Joseph, who now holds immense power. In a deeply emotional series of encounters, Joseph tests their character before revealing his identity. Instead of seeking revenge, he forgives them, declaring one of the most profound truths in Genesis. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Genesis 50:20. Joseph's story concludes with him inviting his entire family to live in Egypt, where they thrive under his protection. His life demonstrates that God's sovereignty and goodness are not limited by human evil or hardship. The key takeaway? No matter how dire the situation, God can and will work all things for His purposes. Joseph's story is a reminder that trusting God's plan, even when we don't understand it, leads to redemption and restoration. The book of Genesis concludes with a message of hope. Despite humanity's failures, God's promises endure. From creation to covenant, from sin to redemption, Genesis sets the stage for the rest of the Bible. It reveals God's faithfulness, His justice, and His grace. The story of Genesis isn't just ancient history, it's our story too. It invites us to trust in the God who created us, loves us, and works all things for good.